Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome. My name is Lenny Rose, and I'm the events manager at East City Bookshop, a woman-owned, community-focused independent bookstore located right here on Capitol Hill and currently underwater. We're fine. Thank you all so much for being here today and for tuning in to our live stream if you are watching that way. As you all know, a few weeks ago, our store suffered a flood from a leak in the space above ours and has been closed since then. Repairs are well underway. We're doing fine. We hope to be open in a couple of weeks, fingers crossed, knock on wood. But we are incredibly grateful to our local community for stepping up and helping out. And I want to thank our friends at the Hill Center for being so gracious with their time and their space and their help. Thank you to Marianne, Catherine, and Lamar in particular for their help and support. We are hoping to be open by the later half of August, fingers crossed, knock on wood. And if we are, we hope to see you in store for our Bookstore Romance Day on August 17th, and that is Bookstore Romance Day across the country. So even if you don't go to ours, you can go to others. But please come to ours if we're open. And keep an eye on our social media for more updates and information. That is where you will find the easiest information about our reopening. So who here is a Formula One fan? Okay, good. Who here is a sports romance fan in general? Yeah, good. Love to hear it. I have never watched Formula One myself, but I've heard so much about it from my friends that are deeply invested, and I am a hockey fan, so I feel like, emotional equivalence. And I love sports romances. I love them, and I was immediately sold on Crossing Line from the moment I heard about it. Formula One Dev Anderson's career is on the line after a social media disaster leaves him with an angry team and sponsors threatening to jump ship. He needs someone to help save his image, and there's one woman who can fix it all. There's just one problem. She's his best friend's little sister, and he kissed her last year and hasn't been able to stop thinking about it since. Willow and Dev are determined to keep things strictly professional, regardless of old feelings and the blazing chemistry between them, but in the glittering and high-stakes world of Formula One, some lines are just meant to be crossed. Our author of the evening is Simone Soltani, who is a romance author and former ghostwriter for a serialized fiction platform. Born and raised in Washington, D.C., she holds a BA in geography from the George Washington University, which she likes to think comes in handy for world building in her novels. When she's not writing, she spends most of her time planning vacations she'll probably never go on, reorganizing her many bookshelves, and watching sports while cuddling her dogs. Joining her in conversation is Annie Crown, an author of new adult and contemporary romance full of humor, heart, and plenty of spice. Born and raised California, born and raised California girl, I can read. She holds a bachelor's in English from USC, I promise I can read, and enjoys iced coffee in the morning and frozen margaritas in the afternoon. Please join me in welcoming our authors of the evening. Hello. Hello, everyone. Okay. I don't know how you want to kick this off. We can jump directly into it.
Yeah.
Which is, my name is Annie. I have known Simone since we were early teenagers. We met writing online, which is a really goofy way to meet people. But I 10 out of 10 recommend it because we've now lived together internationally.
Yes, we have.
And this is like our fourth year in a row of planning girls trips together. So 10 out of 10 recommended.
Absolutely.
We now are both published authors, which is really exciting too. We've taken this pro. And I was actually one of the first people to read the prologue of Across the Line when it was all that existed across the line.
Way back in like what, March 2023, if not earlier than that?
Yeah, no, it's been a hot second. Everybody trad moves really slow. So
no,
it's been a hot minute. But I've had the pleasure of watching this book from its conception to the almost final drafts to then the final drafts. And I just want to say, I mean, I'm super biased, but this is an amazing book. Thank you. It really reflects you. So if you laugh at the book, know that you're laughing at Simone. She's genuinely very funny.
You're laughing at me, not with me.
It's with. She knows what she's doing. As you said, you are an accomplished writer. You've been writing since you were a teenager, a very young baby.
Yes.
And you've done it professionally for a while. So she knows what she's doing. You're in good hands. This is a book for fans of Formula One, of course, but you also don't need to know the sport at all, I would say.
No, it is definitely a book where if you are new to Formula One, like if you're new to just the sport in general, it's okay. I will walk you through it. I will hold your hand. I will make sure, like, I don't explain things like flat out. I do a lot of like the context clues things. So like, you know, we all kind of feel kind of smart as we figure it out together. So yeah, it's good for newbies, people who have never watched a Formula One race, have never had any interest in watching one, and for the hardcore fans, people who've been watching for a long time. So
if you know any of the Formula One drama, you're going to see little snippets of inspiration. You're going to go, I know exactly what drove that plot point.
Oh yeah.
I also want to say it's not fan fiction, which is something that I think is really hard for anybody who's writing about a sport that really exists. All sports romance authors kind of know I mean, people are going to read this book and probably be like, I think I know which driver Dev is modeled after. Let's talk about Dev though, because I do want to get into the actual characters in this book and not just yap about Formula One for an hour.
Which we absolutely could.
We unfortunately have hyperfixation. No, this is the hyperfixation sport. But Dev is a Formula One driver.
Yes.
He is, how do you want to just highlight him?
Well, Dev is our sweet sunshine boy who kind of has a bit of a naughty streak, I will say. He drives for a team called Argonaut. Their tagline is all American all the time. And Dev is, you know, he's Indian American, he's biracial. So he's kind of the brown guy on this team. And he's just like, okay, sometimes I feel like I'm the odd one out here. But yeah, he is pretty much trying to get out of this team. Like he wants to stay in Formula One, like he's trying his absolute best, even after he's had like, you know, this scandal that really wasn't his fault, but you know, he did contribute to, you know, kind of pissing off his social media manager who may have posted something that was not so great. And you know, he's determined to stay in the sport, but he wants better for himself. Like what driver doesn't? Like if you're at a lower midfield team or somewhere down at the very bottom, like of course you want to, you know, everyone wants a championship. Everyone wants to win Grand Prix. Like there's no driver out there who's going to say,
except for Yuki Tsunoda, whose big dream is to open a restaurant and he watches like that.
Yuki Tsunoda is just like, well, please, I just want my food. But yeah, it's just like he wants to succeed. He wants to do his absolute best, and he feels like his team is holding him back. And so, you know, there is that internal conflict that he has of, you know, being this bright sunshine, like, you know, I believe in myself, like I can do anything I set my mind to, but being held back by this team. And he's just like, oh, I gotta get out of here. I need to figure my way out of this team. So that's one of his struggles.
Yeah, Dev is definitely a sunshine. Reading the prologue, immediately sense of voice. I think the first line is, boy howdy. I messed up. Which is a great opening line and really gives you an immediate image of who Dev is as a character. Yeah, he is a sunshine.
And our other lead, Willow, is also a
She's
sunshine.
also a sunshine girl. You know, when I was plotting this book, it was just like, I know grumpy sunshine is such a popular trope, and don't get me wrong, I love it. But sometimes you kind of want to see sunshine, sunshine. You want to see those two, you know, big bright characters like shine their light on each other and just be super bright together. And so, you know, when I was coming up with characters, I was just like, oh yeah, she's gonna be, you know, the sweet sunshine girl who believes in him and like, you know, is there supporting him every step of the way because she wants to see him succeed, and in return, he wants to see her succeed. We're neighbors, so this is a brother's best friend romance, and so, you know, she has a little bit of an issue with, you know, her brother's friend group because she did previously date a friend of her brother's, and it ended very badly, and so we kind of have the overbearing brother, like, no, I don't want you getting involved with any more of my friends, you know, just to keep you safe, essentially. And so we have an element of like forbidden food,
Which I loved. I personally, when Simone told me it was going to be brother's best friend, I went, oh no, because she knows that I have a beef with like the protective brother trope.
yeah,
And I think it can get really silly really fast. You handled this one. I mean, you got my comments on the document, but I was
Yeah.
like, holy cow, like
Oh.
you pulled it off. I think this book is light. This book is fun. This book does have its goofy moments because, I mean, it's
it's goofy,
romance.
silly fun, you know?
But there were several moments in the book where I was like, this just feels really emotionally honest, if that makes sense. I was like, no, these people feel very real. This feels like they have genuine reason to be like, oh, please, maybe don't. Like, this can get so messy. And they handled it very maturely, I think, which was really, just altogether, the book is so cozy, which is great. I mean, Formula One romance, it's a very dangerous. I mean, I'm saying that as I can't spoil the ending, but there's high drama in the book. But a lot of the book is also quite cozy. I think part of that too is I can see so much of you in kind of the representation that you brought to the table.
Yeah.
Willow has hypermobility issues. They go to an Indian wedding at one point, which was so fun. Such a fun scene in the book. I want you to be able to talk about that part too.
Yeah, so the rep in the book, so Willow has hypermobility, like that's what I specify in the book, but you know, if we really want to get into details, she has something called Ehlers-Danlos, which is something I also have. And so essentially my joints just don't like to stay where they're supposed to, and they just slip and slide, and a little bit of chronic pain thrown in there, just for, you know, just for fun, just for funsies. And you know, it was just like, well, I kind of want to see myself on a page. I kind of want to see, you know, that representation of a woman who is dealing with the same things that I deal with, but it doesn't take over her life. It is not the main focus of the book. It is not the main focus of what she does and how she carries herself. Yes, it's an element, and it definitely plays into, you know, her care for other people as well, because when you have a chronic illness, you kind of have to consider things a little bit differently than someone who doesn't have a chronic illness might. So when I think about, okay, I have to be able to make sure I can walk a mile with all of my friends. And then I'm like, okay, how many of my other friends might have difficulty with that? Or what might they be struggling with? And, you know, I think that care and consideration shines through also in Willow, because she cares so much about the people around her, and she wants them to be able to thrive. And we really see that, you know, when she's with Deb and trying to, you know, help them, you know, get to a better team and all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, both these characters are biracial. So Willow is black and white, and Deb is Indian and white. And so, you know, I'm also biracial. So it just felt fitting to kind of, it's kind of a write what you know sort of deal. But at the same time, it's just like, okay, well, how many, you know, first of all, just in general sports romances are we seeing with characters of color or characters with disabilities or chronic illnesses and anything like that? And, you know, we need more of that rep, and I wanted to see myself represented. It's just like, you know, we talk about self-insert characters. It's just like, yeah, obviously I am in this book in the form of Willow. It's just like I like to say she's me, except 10 inches shorter and 10 times
You were
nicer.
so brave for that, because when
Yeah.
Simone told me, I mean, we joke sometimes. We're both pretty
We're
tall.
tall
I think we're
girls.
taller than most of the drivers.
Oh, yeah, it's
We
humbling to
try
think
not
about.
to think about it. If you've ever had a crush on an F1 driver, don't look up
Don't
their
look at
height.
their height.
Don't do it. You'll hurt your feelings.
Yeah, no, it's
It's
just,
kind of like when I had a crush on Taylor Lautner in like middle school. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm taller than him already.
yeah. It's hurtful. Sometimes you look it up, it's like, oh, I love Lewis Hamilton. But I'm like, if I stood next to that man, short king, but I could not stand anywhere near him. I would just simply pass away. I would.
Well, I mean, I think that's what, I mean, when we talk about sports romance, I mean, sports romance is so interesting to get into because why sports? Why are we fascinated by athletes? F1 is
Competency.
actually, no, it's totally the competency and it's just the passion that these people have because I mean, you think about somebody like Lewis Hamilton and you're like, this guy has been doing this for a long time.
He's been through it.
He's so good at what he does.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with it. And I think a lot of us like seeing people
We
obsessed with
respect
something.
that. Yeah, it's just, seeing these people who are so dedicated to their craft. And it's just like, I think that's one of the big appeals of sports romance. Like I said, competency. It's someone who is thriving at what they're doing and they're doing something they love at that. And then, I know there's also usually the team element, that found family in a way. And it's a little different, when you think about Formula One compared to like hockey or something like that, because you have
The
this,
families are so dysfunctional.
Yeah.
So messy.
they are very messy. And it's just like, you have there's a hierarchy within the team. It's just, you have two drivers who are just like, these are the guys. And then you have this whole sort of like background team supporting them that don't get as much of like, the highlight. And then when you think about like hockey or basketball, it's just like this whole team of, people coming together and a little family. I love that. But, it's like with Formula One, you have to consider if this is, they're teammates, but they're competing against each other. And so you have that other thing that's just delicious. Oh, what
It's
tension.
really good setup.
It really is. It's just that rivalry right there. And I'm like, all right, yeah, this is some good stuff. But yeah, it's, sports romance tends to, I feel like it also features really big, muscular men a lot of the time. And then except for F1, we have our short kings. And it's like, okay, well, this is obviously they're elite athletes and they're doing all of this training and they have to be so cautious of like how much weight they gain or lose and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, this is not a sport where you're gonna be like, he was 6'4" and built like a linebacker. I'm like, he wouldn't fit in the car.
Deb is 6 foot. Deb is 6 foot, just in case anybody's worried that's a deal breaker. He's 6 foot.
Exactly. I was actually very careful not to specify exactly how tall Deb was in the book,
I
just
mean,
because.
it's difficult. I think we love romance. Obviously, you have to commit to it to this degree, I think. But I think thinking about diversity in romance and what we're allowed to write and what is considered hot, not hot, where people get an ick and are like, oh, I can't read that.
Yeah.
I think it's actually good sometimes to read outside of a very specific brand of romance. I love that specific brand of romance that we're, when things are just, he's huge and I'm a tall girl, so I'm allowed to say that. Yes, thank you. But I think it's really good to read outside of our boundaries a little and
Just explore, it's like,
you never know when the short king is gonna steal your heart.
short king can steal your heart any day. Yeah. And then, you're wearing a Toto shirt, which is.
Yeah. This is her shirt.
It's actually my shirt.
I did not bring this from home.
I did.
She supplied the shirt.
I did, but it's just like you think about, Toto Wolff, and he is this 6'4", team principal, and I'm like, well, you're probably not going to be the
So
lead
stay
of a.
tuned for that.
Yeah,
one.
that's coming down
5
books from now. Let's
spoiler.
go. If you're my agent listening to this, I did not say that.
No, we would never say anything
No.
that Simone was not allowed
I'm
to
not allowed to talk about
it.
Yeah, but no, it's just like you have to kind of consider, you don't want to, you want to be realistic enough with things. It's just like obviously romance is a fantasy. And I think leaning into that fantasy, there's nothing wrong with that. It can be escapism, but it's also still, it's grounded in realism, especially if you're writing contemporary romance, obviously. If you're writing romantasy or something like that, it's different.
We joke about like the toucher and you die trope and how that really doesn't carry over into certain genres.
Yeah, a workplace romance toucher and you die.
One we're like, well, he's going to HR.
Exactly, that's an HR violation. Yeah.
But I will say F1 is a great sport for the fantasy of romance because unlike a lot of those sports, you're traveling internationally constantly. So this book goes everywhere, it feels like.
It does, and that's one thing I really love about F1, and I think obviously, as my intro said, I have a degree in geography. So I really like the concept of the world and everything around us. And I am a nerd and I am not afraid to admit it. But I think one of the appeals for me for F1, I've been an F1 fan for like over a decade now. And I think the appeal of it is that they go to so many different places and there's so the diversity of the different countries that they go to and they get to go, exploring. And like my favorite is the behind the scenes stuff that you get to see. Like those little driver videos of their poor social media managers out there
All the drivers hate social media.
Yeah.
It's a really fun sport to follow because they're all big nerds. They don't like to show off unless they're in a car. And these social media managers put them together and are like, okay, you're gonna play this really silly little game.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, you're getting paid plenty. Like you
Yeah,
can't
exactly.
put
That's
up with this
not
for like
gonna
10
be fun.
minutes.
But yeah, it's like the travel element. You get to go all around the world with the sport. And, I think that's like a big appeal to me because it's just like you're not stuck in kind of like one location for anything. It's just like, it's an international sport in the truest sense. It's just like, if you think about American football, like, where are we going?
All the beautiful scenic parts of America.
I love just going to
It's more fun to do Monaco, Singapore, Australia, Spain,
all of
Italy,
these different places.
everywhere in the world,
And I'm like,
China.
it just makes for such good content in general. And it's just like when you're writing a book, you're like, yeah, I really want to write about going to Monaco. Like, we're lucky enough that we have been.
No, we literally went. We committed. We
committed to the day.
again. We lived together internationally,
Yeah.
and I think the discussion literally was, well, we're kind of close.
We were
in Paris, I think. We were like, okay, so we could probably make this work.
Yeah, we were just like, oh, is there an EasyJet flight that 65 pounds?
There was
Let's
an
go.
EasyJet flight, and
Yeah.
just so anybody's aware, Monaco, very small, tiny. You walk around for a day.
It is a day trip.
And you're like, wow, I'm super broke actually.
Yeah.
This city is like really bougie.
Yeah, we were sitting at a cafe. We were like super tired. Oh my gosh! And there was these two beautifully dressed men, and they were sitting at the table across from ours, and they had this dog, and even the dog looked rich.
The dog stared us down. I was
He
like,
stared us down like,
we're not supposed to.
You don't belong here. And we were like,
He knows we took EasyJet.
Oh yeah, he knew, and we took the 6-pound train from Nice over, and we said we are going to take the commuter train because that's what we can afford. Yeah, no, but it's just world travel is just it's a luxury for so many people, and then you think about F1 drivers, and you're just like, oh, they're just gonna hop on their little private jet with all their other little driver friends and go to all these different countries. I'm just like, how cool! What a luxury! What would it be like to be in that life?
And what kind of drama goes on those private
All of the
jets?
drama. Oh yeah. Like, not to get into like real F1 drivers real quick, but like I was thinking about, okay, well, remember when like Lando and Max had that little issue? They're friends. What if they'd been on the same private plane?
I think the story goes that they had to, like, they switched
Switch
around
planes,
where
yeah.
they were sitting on private jets. They were like,
Oh.
okay, I'm gonna take your jet instead because I can't see him
Write
right
it
now.
down. Write it down. We gotta write it.
No, unfortunately, this is a sport that keeps giving. I keep texting you, I think, articles and going, so which book is this slotting into? And you're like, please stop.
Please
I have
stop.
so many full outlines.
Exactly. It's just like every day there's something new. And then, we have silly season. For those who don't know what silly season is, it's essentially, a time when contracts are up for drivers at their teams. And they're all trying to get one of those coveted 20 spots on the grid because that's all there is. And so if you don't get a spot, you're not driving in Formula One. It's just like, maybe you could be a reserve driver or another team's third driver just in case something ever happens to one of the main drivers. But it's just like, you have to sit on the sidelines and watch someone else live your dream. Oh.
Leads to the perfect psychology for the lead character in a romance novel.
Yeah, I'm not saying I have 20 books planned, but I absolutely have 20 books planned. Yeah. If you're my agent listening, I did not say that.
No, we would never say anything. Our agent would not do that.
Of course we wouldn't. But yeah, I feel like Cross the Line really has that element of travel in there. And then, we do get into like summer break, in which we kind of have like more of a family sort of thing. And there's still in Malibu. And I'm like, I want to go to Malibu. That sounds nice. I just want to go to all the places. But yeah, it's, that it's the romance is a fantasy in that sense, but also the idea of being able to live a fantasy, the life of a Formula One driver. I'm like, that's cool. I want to live that. So here I am writing books
Except
about
for the
it.
driving part, neither of us
Well,
drive, just,
yep.
it's ironic actually,
We
but
are
this is the
legally
sport.
allowed to drive.
Legally allowed, but at what cost?
At what cost? We are dangerous to society, but
I think that's the fantasy of it.
The
too.
fantasy of it is
It's
that we
just,
can actually
oh my gosh,
drive.
imagine being able to drive.
Imagine.
It's so cool.
and to be driving so fast, and I also think that's an appeal, like the danger of it all. It's like, yes, Formula One has gotten a lot safer over, even the past like 5 years. It's just like, when the Halo was introduced, which protects drivers' heads and stuff like that. It's just like, I think about, the wheel of a car going over top of the Halo and being like, that would have broken someone's neck, that would have crushed their head pre-Halo. Or like, when Joe Guan had that terrible crash and he just kept flipping and flipping and flipping and landing upside down in the barriers. And it was just like, that man would have been dead 10 years ago. And so, you have to remember there's still an element of danger and peril every time they get into the car. Of course, a lot of crashes now are just like, well, you totaled the car, but you're fine. And it's like, when you're watching a race and you see someone hit the wall, and then they come, like their engineers come on the radio and be like, are you okay? And you're holding your breath waiting to be like, yes, that driver is okay. You've heard them over the radio, they're fine. Or like, it's even the smallest thing, like when Daniel Ricciardo crashed and he didn't let go of the wheel and he broke his hand. And it's just like, that will set you back, but you can lose your spot in a team so easily. And I'm like, oh, inspiration. Like, I'm sorry for you guys and your suffering, but also like, let me sit down on my laptop right now.
Yeah, no, I think F1, I know that you've been a fan of the sport for a long time, but it also is, I would say, a really fascinating sport because it's combining so many different elements kind of from other niches of romance. I think contemporary sports romance is a niche that we're starting to see open up more. We have a lot more dark, hot romances popping up.
Yeah, those are
that are
pretty
doing
interesting.
I'm like, okay, is a serial killer too? Like, come on. And I feel like it's really fun to watch you open up such a world with the series where you're like, okay, we can do a lot of things here.
Yeah.
I do think that your vibe right now for these books though is incredibly wholesome. Like despite the danger, despite the accidents, despite crashes, there's really kind of a warm and cozy vibe to this book.
Yeah, because I mean, first of all, it's just where I was in my life at the time. It was just like I've written, quite a few books in my time in various
Just
places.
a few.
Just a few, and then so much ghostwriting, and it's just like it was off the tail of writing a very heavy book about a murder being covered up and all that kind of stuff. And I was also grieving at the time because my mom had passed away like a year before, and I was like, you know what, it's time for a lighthearted book. We can't do this anymore. So it was just like, okay, let's have fun with it. Let's get weird with it. Like, let's just have our sunshine characters and make this feel like a rom-com again. It's just like, yes, it has elements of drama, especially when we get to like the epilogue, but it's a fun book and it's light and it's not supposed to make you feel like your stomach's gonna drop to the floor. And it's like, we have those little bumps, little here and there. And, like, I'm fine with that. Sometimes you need those comfort books that you're like, this has everything I love in it. It's just like, it has Formula One, obviously, and it has, a female main character who's obsessed with macarons, and I'm like, I love macarons, all right. It has Bollywood movies. It's just like we're talking about, all my favorite songs from Bollywood movies, and all my favorite scenes, and just these elements that like make me happy. And it's just like, I think you have to write the book that you believe in and that you have fun writing, or that you have this element of like attachment to it in a way, because otherwise what's the point? It's like, if we can't have fun with it in certain ways, or if we can't feel like, wow, like even if you're writing a very heavy book, it's still like a moment of, I feel this connection to it. And it's just like, then you hope other people feel that same connection. And even if they don't, like, it's okay, because that's a piece of you in there, and it's always going to exist, and it's always going to be like a time capsule of like kind of where you were in your life and in the world at that time. And I think, that's what I really love about books, and what I love about like, talking to other authors and being like, oh, like I can kind of tell where you were in your life when you wrote this and what you were feeling, especially we can talk about
Even
night
when you
shifts.
think you're like coping well and you're like, no, I'm totally
Oh,
fine. Your
yeah.
book will lead you fulfilled. Your
Yes.
book will reflect some part of what you're going through.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people during COVID we saw this big rise in books, like romance novels about death.
Yeah.
So off the top of my head, Morbidly Yours.
Love it. Yeah.
What's the Dead Poets? Ashley Austin, what's your book?
Um,
I'm thinking Tortured Poets, aren't I?
Yeah.
Everything's a jumble in my head.
we
We didn't prep that much. We were like, no, we know each other so well.
we yap so well
No, we
together.
yap constantly, so sometimes the conversations bleed over.
Yeah.
But I do feel like this book was definitely a clear reflection of not necessarily where you were, but where you needed to be and where you needed out of the manuscript. Not to psychoanalyze you, but
Bring it
I do,
on.
but I do think that you needed this book, and I think it's such a beautiful book. And I think, I mean, I'm obviously quite biased, but I really enjoyed the book. So
I'm so glad, considering I forced her to read it.
it was less of a force, more like something came out of me. This prologue, it's
Yeah.
just happening. Like, is it okay? And I was like, this is not just okay. This is fantastic.
I think you said, how dare you?
No, I think the first text was, how dare
And then
you?
it was just like a pause, and I was like, is that good? And then it was like a paragraph of like,
It was
yeah,
like, okay,
keep
well,
going.
first off, this is beautiful. Second off, I love you. Third, I cannot believe you would send this when the rest of the book
Like,
is
where's
not
the
written yet.
Yeah, no, it's like her comments throughout like the Google Doc when I finally sent it to her, it was just like, that got me through. It was just like, all right, here we go. She likes it, that's all that matters. So yeah, it was a good experience. Like drafting that whole thing, it was just like, I'm so happy writing this, and you know, it got me into a better headspace, and it got me into a better place. And it's just like, you know, I will say it's just like I'm writing another book in a series, and you know, it's got a bit of a different vibe because I'm in a different place in my life, and I'm feeling a little bit more, you know, fun and wild and free. So it's just like, okay, it's got a little bit of that in the book.
That's as close to a spoiler as
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I'm afraid of your agent. I think she will come for me.
Yeah,
If you say anything
she's
more.
just I'm gonna get an email in about 5 minutes and be like, what did you do?
Yeah, that's a little close.
Yeah,
That's careful.
better watch yourself. Yeah. No, but I'm excited to keep, you know, writing more books in this series, and you know, I feel like I've set up and crossed the line with quite a few different people and or drivers, like, you know, other books could be about. And I'm like, if I'm given the privilege of writing more past book 2, it's just like, we got ideas.
You gotta write it for me.
I will say, yeah, even if I'm not contracted, I'll write them just for you. Yeah.
So I do want to mention briefly
Yeah.
that this book was not originally bound for trad pubs, that this, what we're currently talking about, this iteration of the book and having an agent who's like, careful.
Don't
there,
say that.
Whoa there.
Yeah.
That was not initially the plan. And
Yeah.
while I think we can talk about you needing to write this book and it being a healing experience and really fun,
Yeah.
I also think you are a businesswoman. Your Capricorn is in your top 3 and it is showing. So can you walk us through a little how Across the Line came to be traditionally published?
It's a bit of a wild story, you know, every single step of it. So forgive me while I recount it all. So I started writing this manuscript because I said, let's go, let's do it. I've had this idea in my head for many, many moons. It was probably about 2020 when I was like really starting to compile everything to my big little Scrivener document and being like, oh, wow, I have a lot of ideas. Maybe I should write one of these one day. And then, you know, 3 years later, I said, oh, it's time, let's go. And so I wrote this book and I had plans to self-publish it. And so I had, you know, set up my author Instagram and I was doing the whole marketing thing. And, you know, I got this beautiful cover from Lenny Kaufman and it was just like, wow, this is great. Like, I hope someone reads it. And then suddenly it was just like, oh, there are a lot of people who are interested. It was like, I remember when I was doing signups for advanced reader copies before, you know, I was planning to self-publish the book in like September 2023. And I was like, if I get 10 people to sign up for this book, I'll be so happy. Like, oh, wow, that's great. I got 150 on day 1. And I said, uh-oh, that's a lot of people. And, you know, I was still kind of like going through everything, getting ready for like the launch. Like we were in Palm Springs together and you saw how stressed I was because I was doing the last round of proofreads and edits and all that stuff. And I was just like, okay, here we go. We're going to do this. We're going to kick off our self-publishing career. And maybe 5 people will buy the book and it'll be great. And then a week before I was set to self-publish the book, I started getting these emails from editors at traditional publishing houses being like, hey, we saw your social media marketing, we saw your cover, we've heard your pitch, we'd like to read the manuscript. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever you say. And so, me just being like, well, it's worth a shot. I send it to them. And then, I had one editor get back to me before all the others. And she was just like, hey, we want this book. And I was like, oh, are you playing with me right now? And she's like, no, this is a real offer. And so, I had chats with her and she was wonderful. She's at Anne Macmillan in the UK. And I was like, all right, like, there's a real offer on the table. Uh-oh, I need an agent. Because there is no way you want to go into that world of publishing and contracts and all that scary stuff without having someone in your corner. And, I was lucky that I've been in this industry long enough and I know a lot of people. And thankfully, like a friend of a friend was just like, if you need help, let me know. And I said, I need help, please, can you put me in contact, give me a list of agents to reach out to. And I was extremely lucky. I sent one email to the agent I was the most impressed by and I thought would be a good match. And it was a Saturday at like 5:30 p.m. East Coast time. And she was in London, so it was like 10:30 at night. And I'm like, all right, it's a Saturday. She'll get back to me on Monday. Like, the deal was happening quickly. And, one of the things was, oh, you cannot self-publish it. We want to be, the main publisher of this. And I was like, okay, well, we're getting down to it. Like, hopefully I'll hear back from this agent. 30 minutes later, she sends me an email. She was just like, oh yeah, let me read it. Let's go. And Monday we hit the ground running in negotiations. And then by Wednesday, I was announcing, hey guys, the book's not actually coming out next week. I'm really sorry, but I can't talk about it.
At which point you couldn't talk about it. So I'm in the corner screaming because of course.
Because I'm calling her being like, oh my God, help me.
When you're best friend.
No, we didn't say that.
No, never. And as much as I say your agent scares me, she's also fantastic.
She's the most wonderful person.
And I encourage any author to go out and get an agent. Please don't do anything that agent did ever.
Yeah.
But she was a saving grace, and I think navigating TradPub is a whole nother universe.
Yeah. It's a different sphere completely, and it's just like, I love having people helping me, and I think that's the big difference between self-publishing, where you're pretty much doing everything on your own, and traditional publishing. And I'm very lucky that I have my UK team, I have my US team at Berkeley, and these are the people who are getting me through it. And it's just like I just finished writing book 2. And it was just like turning that into my editors was just like, oh, it's really nice knowing I'm going to have help to make this the best book it can be. And I'm like, wow, what a privilege. I love this. This is great. So yeah, it's been a journey to get to this point. And plus, the book came out in the UK in May, and then I had to wait another 2 months for it to come out here in July. And I was just like, I will sit here and twiddle my thumbs in the meantime. And
Twiddle thumbs meaning speed dashing.
oh yeah, speed dashing.
But you're getting like, okay, one simultaneous. We grew up writing on Wattpad.
Yes, we did.
And if anybody's familiar with Wattpad, you post chapters as you write them essentially. And you can take your sweet time. You're giving away the book for free essentially. You're showing everybody a free first draft. So we both grew up going, okay, like a chapter a week. And then you become a professional and you're like, that is ridiculous. That is not going to cut it. You have to write much faster. Luckily, I mean, you have the background because you had worked at an app where you manage serialized fiction, you have your own serialized fiction.
Yeah.
You understand the time crunch. You've gotten very good at kind of having your regular level of output just much faster.
Yeah.
Which is what you have to do if you're going professional with this.
Yeah, and I think even for self-publishing, it's just like those authors, so much respect. They're turning out books every 3 months. And I'm like, how are you doing this? That's a lot of work. But yeah, it's just, publishing in general, wonderful as it is also just like, all right, it's a lot of hurry up and wait as well. It's like you turn it in and then you're like, well, I'm not going to hear anything for a month. What do I do now? but yeah, it's just like, I'm really excited with book 2. It's in my editor's hands, and seeing what it can be turned into and all the fun that we're gonna have with it. And I'm just like, cross the line, such a fun experience altogether. And like, having it finally out in the world and being like, oh, I can actually talk to people about it now. And I can, talk about that wild epilogue, which a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't like the epilogue actually. And I'm just like, well, it sets up for the rest of the books in the series.
It was probably one of the more stressful parts of the book. You're like, oh, we're racing now. This is okay. Yes, we're gonna do this.
We're doing it.
But you've opened up an enormous, great world for yourself in these books, and I think that's personally, I love reading kind of interconnected standalone series. I think those are so much fun to follow different couples as you go, and I think the sports world that you set up, be fictional, very fictional, not fan fiction, it's fully fictional.
Yeah. It's like, I don't fault anyone for being like, oh my gosh, he's so Danny Rick coded. I'm like, yeah, he is.
A little bit.
A little bit. A wee bit. But then it's just like, also just, you have to think about like character archetypes and just, how, you think about the current F1 drivers in the grid, and you can kind of fit them into all of these different tropes very easily. Have you seen those TikToks where it's just like, F1 drivers is romance tropes?
I eat those
every single time I'm watching them over and over and over.
I will loudly disagree with them sometimes.
I'm like Max Verstappen,
like Lando
enemies to
never.
lovers. I'm like, but yeah, Oscar Piastri, like Grumpy Sunshine, I could see that. It's fun. But yeah, it's just, having fun with, kind of taking little bits and pieces from, former F1 drivers, current F1 drivers, and then just making them into like, these original characters with their own traits and characteristics and all that kind of stuff. Is so much fun. And it's just like, there's just so much good material in like current F1 and past F1 to, work in there. And like, especially like Fernando Alonso is always at the scene of the crime. And I'm like, I take so much, inspiration from all of the weird things that man has ended up in. And I'm just like, how did this happen for you? But also tell me more.
He's nosy. That's the thing.
He puts his nose in everything. He does. Like whenever you see him in the interview pen, he's just like running around and trying to like hear whatever he's saying. I'm like, I respect that so much. Like you were a messy man and I live for it. And so it's nice to be able to, work stuff like that when you like see it and you're like, oh, I think it would be really great in the book, and you can kind of twist it and work it and, make it into something really great.
Yeah, and to approach it from a romance lens.
Yeah.
Because
That's completely
I
different.
know that F1 is a huge part of this book, but also there are vast parts of the book where I'm like, this is romance.
Yeah.
Like we're in Dev and Willow's heads. We're seeing them fall in love. We're seeing that really struggle with this very well-handled issue of brothers best friends. It's a really well balanced novel, not to like once again praise you, but it's a very well balanced. We both are Leos. It's really devastating.
Unfortunately.
The chat is the rebag. It's really you're doing so well.
So
I love you
amazing.
so much.
I love you. Yeah.
But I think you balance the book really well,
Yeah,
which is the hard part of writing a romance.
Sports
Any
romance,
niche of
especially.
romance, really, I think you would struggle with letting a niche, because the niche is usually kind of like the set dressing of the romance, and you can't really let it overwhelm the romance, and I don't think you did that.
Well, I think, with sports romance especially, like that's our wheelhouse here. You have to find that balance between the sport and the romance. And I think, a lot of people struggle, even I take sometimes with certain drafts. It's just like, is there enough of the sport and is there enough of the romance? And is one overshadowing the other? And in a lot of cases, it's just like, you have to remember this is still a romance book. At the end of the day, that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. And so you always want the romance to be the strongest part of it all. And it's just like, yes, you want the sports element in there, but also it's just like, there are a lot of readers out there who are just like, girlie, I'm skimming that. Like, you told me.
We see that with every sport. I cannot say, I don't really know hockey very well. I've read a lot of hockey, like, you cannot tell me if something is wrong. I'm like, I'm here for the vibes.
Yeah, I'm like, they're describing a game. I'm like, go team. And sports.
Go sport. Hit that ball. They're like, that's not a ball. I'm like, it's close enough. Just let me live.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yes, we have our, hockey puck thing. Let's go. And that's, it's.
I think the duality of women is knowing absolutely nothing about some sports and then knowing
like
like an aggressive degree about it.
If I could probably design an F1 car, Adrian Newey,
Watch it away.
I am coming for your job wherever you end up. Please tell me, Adrian Newey, if you're listening, you're not. but I need to know what's on the,
It's on the live stream,
actually. I need to know where he's going because, gosh, when you have a good engineer, oh, that just is. I need to know where he's going. I need to know what's happening with Audi and all of Red Bull's people jumping ship. It's just a deliciously messy sport. And the fact that we really don't have that many F1,
No, there
folks
aren't
out
enough.
there.
I keep shouting to the void. I'm
Give
like,
me
does anybody
more.
else want to write? Well, I can't because I've got other deadlines, but like somebody else.
Please, it's just like, I want more to read. Like, give me what I want. I am demanding it because there's so much to work with. And, and I'm sure it's the same with other sports. It's just like, I was, really into soccer/football, like, for a long time. And I loved the messiness of like, player transfers and ooh, who pissed off who, ooh, the president of this team does not like that player, so they're out, they're going to the worst team possible. It's the politics of it all, and I think that's what really gets me. Like, I was a poli-sci major for a while there.
The poli-sci geography.
Yeah, they intersect. Okay, I will get into it because I will stay on that tangent forever. But it's just like, it's the politics of it all. It's the people, it's the drama, it's the gossip, it's everything that goes on off track for England, especially in F1. And like, that is almost even way more entertaining than the stuff that goes on track. And that stuff's fun sometimes, unless, it's Max Verstappen was leading the race by 30 seconds. And I'm just like, good for you, my friend, but I want drama. Like, the last races ending so close together. And
Yeah, if anybody does not watch F1, this season is
This
a
is a
really
good
great
one to
one to
get
jump
into.
into. It's probably one of
because
the,
we've had a bunch of different race
which
winners.
does not have, unfortunately, the sport is typically like one guy wins them all, and you're
Yeah.
like, congrats, I guess, like you were really good, but that was a
Yeah.
little bit boring to
Like,
watch.
I'm really happy for you, but also, why would you do that to me?
Yeah,
Like, that was a personal affront.
just take another engine penalty, like maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Like, gearbox, I'm just gonna rip yours out and, oh no, it went missing.
I would love some, can you write it
Sabotage.
just for me? Can
For
you
you.
write in some sabotage, just like a pinch of
Sorry, we'll
sabotage.
just write that down right now. Yeah, we got this. But yeah, it's the behind the scenes, it's the mess and the drama and the people and the, just all of the different working relationships within a team. And, just the driver component of these two people who are on the same team. They're trying to score points for their team, but also for each other. I mean, for themselves. And then, like, I think about, if you know the Mercedes era, oh God, like, I think about, these two drivers who grew up together, karting as children, were best friends, like traveling the world together. And then they end up at the same Formula One team competing against each other, and they become those bitter rivals. And when, obviously Lewis Hamilton was one of them, and then we had Nico. And, when Nico finally won his title, he said, I'm done. Like, I'm out, guys. Like, that took so much out of me that I could never do that again. And I'm like, how can we watch this sport and all of these things and think, oh, that's boring. I wouldn't want to read a book about that. I'm like, come on, it's great.
Well, I also think it feeds into the fact that romance is, the fantasy is that are really emotional, and like it really is in many ways. The fantasy is he's gonna communicate,
Yeah.
he's gonna have emotion, you're gonna see the emotion, it's gonna be on page. And we joke sometimes that the whole trend of like, there are a lot of team sports, there are a lot of mafia families or small town families, and like the fantasy is that men have like a lot of complex friendships with other men.
Yeah.
And I think this sport in particular adds another layer to that, where it's like, yes, they're deep friends, but also they have to fight each other.
It's just like, especially like recently, sorry to get like back on like real F1 stuff, but like between Lando and Oscar, I'm just like, Lando being asked to give the position back to his teammate so that his teammate could win a race when he was already in the lead. And,
Tense podium celebrations.
So tense. And, it's just like putting that in a book, how fun. Like, it's like, how can I resist that? And I think, a lot of romance authors are they're looking for the tension. And so are a lot of readers. They're looking for that particular tension. They're not always looking for it inside the couple, because sometimes you want that external conflict. And I think, in Cross the Line, it is more about the external conflict than it is about the internal conflict between, the two main characters. And because there's no third act breakup in this book, and I can say that because that's been in the marketing. And, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with third act breakup, but sometimes it just doesn't fit your characters and it doesn't fit what they're going through. And I feel like, you know, when you have that external drama and that external conflict going on, they can fight it together. And I think a lot of, you know, for me, like a lot of the appeal of romance is watching these two people come together and then be like, no, we're gonna fight against this thing that is affecting us both. And we're gonna come out stronger on the other side. I'm like, oh,
Which is honestly the thesis statement of your book, and
yes.
I think you've accomplished it very well, and it's beautifully done. So I think we're gonna have questions from the audience. Although nothing that would upset the agent.
Yes.
I love the book. It's so amazing. Also a fan of one, so I love all the happy to get off of here. So I have two questions for you. One is obviously about the book. So somebody question, what is your favorite like F1 movie right now, or like viral F1 moment that maybe you could envision yourself with like throwing into a book in the future? And then
We'll start there. Okay, I need to repeat it first so like you can have it for everybody watching online. Silly goofy question, what is my favorite F1 meme or moment? The meme that I use the most out of all of them is the Lando Norris chaos. That one, because I feel like there's some kind of like I send that to you often. And because I feel like it applies to everything that's going on in my life, especially with publishing, it's just chaos. Everything is chaos and I love it. Just the smile on his face, chaos. And then Max Verstappen just moving in the background. And then we had a more serious question?
yeah.
Okay.
So then my more serious question, one thing I loved about the book was so many characters that were present throughout the book. And sometimes, you know, when you're reading a book, there's so many different life experiences, just because the author just put that in there, specific on dots, but yours come across so authentically. And like you have Willow's friends who are from like backgrounds, you have Deb, you have Willow herself, and then like Izzy, like part of it. Like, how was that process for you? How was it writing that? How did you approach it?
So the question is like the process of representation and how I approach it and make it feel organic in the book, essentially. You know, I draw a lot from my own life. It's, you know, I am a brown woman moving through the world. And, you know, I have a chronic illness. It's just, I'm able to approach things through, you know, this lens that I already possess. And I feel like, you know, that's one of my privileges as, you know, an author of color and, you know, especially being raised around other cultures as well. And, you know, having that love for these cultures and wanting to learn more and wanting it just to be so integrated in the book so it doesn't feel like, you know, oh, you never want anything to feel like it's just thrown in, just so you can say, oh, it has representation. Because, you know it's not authentic in that case. And it's just, you know, I want to see myself on the page. I want to see my friends on the page. I want to see, you know, the things that I love and respect from other cultures on the page. And, you know, it's like I always want to shout out other authors of color who are from, you know, those marginalized identities. And I want to, you know, celebrate their books too. And I want, you know, to always have that kind of rep in my books as well, because someone out there needs it. I needed it desperately when I was a teenager and all I was reading was white, able-bodied characters. And, you know, it's kind of tough because you read all those things and you internalize it and you're just like, well, is this what I'm supposed to look like? Is this how I'm supposed to act? You know, and then you kind of have to be like, well, no, like I'm my own person. I come from these already beautiful cultures, and you know, you look around you and you see all the people that you're surrounded by who look so different in their own ways, and it's just like, well, no, we all deserve to be seen in that way. And you know, I think integrating it into the book it's kind of second nature for me because you know, I don't really go out of my way to like explain things. It's just this is how it is for this character, and this is how it is, you know, how they live their life. And I think, you know, it's important to do that so it doesn't feel like, you know, oh, we're just throwing it in to be like, oh, give me the points for being like, hey, I did this. So no, it's just, it's got to be, not to be cliche, but just from the heart and from your own experiences in a lot of ways. And yeah, I think that's how I get it done. Thank you. Yes.
We're two drivers that you're ready for this season. I mean, I
I might have a feeling I know one.
The question is the two drivers I'm rooting for this season. Okay, obviously, I am ride or die Lewis Hamilton fan. I'm following him to Ferrari next year, so the Toto shirt will be.
That's why she's let me.
Yeah.
She's like, you can sweat it, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's defunct now, we don't stand him anymore.
Yeah, so I will follow him pretty much the end of the year. You know, second driver, it's tough when you have one, but there's so many others that like I love for their own little reasons. I will just go with my current favorite, Oscar Piastri. That is my boy. Like, he is just so blunt and simply just is just like, yeah, that's just how it is. Okay, sure. And like hearing him on the radio, I'm just like, I love you. Like, you were just, go girl, give us nothing. Like, it's wonderful to hear him because he's so chill. But also it's just, when it comes to radio messages, George Russell. God, that man, yabba dabba do. Like, why would you say that?
His T-pose lives in infamy,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that, I feel like that being is thrown through the group chat.
That's,
quite a bit.
yeah, that's always popping up.
If we were better at Photoshop, we could come up with some true genius, but for now,
Oh.
we just kind of throw it, like, you get the vibe.
He can be the T and cross the line. Oh,
Somebody
who's gonna Photoshop it for me, please? I can't do it myself.
I'm resubscribing to Adobe as we say.
What about Canva? You're good. You got this.
Good.
Canva's hard. It's hard.
Being an author, it's 90% Canva and 10% actually opening the document and writing.
Literally, it's just like I think I spent because I like not to like brag or anything, but like I made the like USA Today like bestseller list, which is so wild to me.
I think you're allowed to brag about that.
I'll brag about it. I
think
made
you're
the
allowed
list.
to.
Is my publisher gonna send me a graphic that I can upload? And they were just like, no. So I was like, oh, I gotta open Canva. It is 7 a.m. I am squinting at the computer screen being like, oh, I removed the background on this thing.
No matter how successful you get in public, we've spoken to other authors, no matter how successful you get, there is a time when you have to break out Canva
You have to do it
yourself.
yourself. Yeah, it's just like I'm very grateful for like all the graphics that my publishing teams have made me. But I'm just like, please just make all of them for me. Like, you want me to write a book and open Canva? I can't do both.
They're asking too much.
They're asking too much of me, but you know what? Sacrifice is made. It's fine. You're so brave. I'm so brave. Anybody else? Yes.
First of all, thank you for letting us have fun on it. Trying to think about it. Well, we should have fun. So, what tropes would you subscribe to your favorite writers if they were in a romance novel?
The agent is sweating.
Oh, yeah. Like, don't you dare. So the question is, so you mean for like current drivers or like a real F1 grid? So what romance novel tropes would I give to all of the F1 drivers on the current grid?
Let's start with like your favorites, the big ones.
Okay.
We don't have to go all the way down the grid. We could be here for hours, honestly. We'll chat, we'll yap forever.
I will yap forever for sure. And you can help me out with this, please. Let's start with Max Verstappen, because I feel like he could lead to, I mean, obviously he's living the, you know,
I feel like this is where I come out as a Max Verstappen sympathizer. I find him very compelling as a character. I like people with mommy issues, I guess.
him acting as a stepfather to his girlfriend's child. I'm like,
Could
you're in
he be a single dad?
he is a
cat dad.
He's a cat dad. He
Single
loves his
dad.
cat. So I can see him as like the single dad.
I don't want to
trope.
psychoanalyze myself to this
Well,
degree. I think Enemies to Lovers is the classic.
Enemies to
that we
Lovers
see
is
with
a
Max
good one for
Verstappen, and I
Max.
honestly think it holds up.
Yeah.
Lewis
Is, gosh, he's just like, I can only see him as like celebrity X normal person. Like, you know, he's like,
he would fall for somebody who doesn't know who he is, because
Yeah.
we get a lot of
Oh my God.
satisfaction out of being like,
You don't know
actually
who I
really
am?
accomplished. This is gonna be so fun to watch
Yeah.
you react to it.
no, I think that would be a fun one of like him, like they bump into each other on the street, she spills her coffee on him, she's just like, I'm
He's walking
so
his
sorry.
dog.
If you're my agent listening, this is not a book.
No, we're just spitballing.
Yeah. Let's see, who else? George Russell.
No, we can't go there.
Skip. Carlos. Oh, I smooth operator.
Full kind of a brother's best
He
friend.
could be our brother's rival.
Cause it's like
Yeah.
he's just out of reach. You're like, he's somewhat approachable, but like, I shouldn't.
He's just,
Except
can-
my mother's favorite driver is Carlos Sainz, so she would be like, he's mine.
yeah,
Just
you can look but
him.
don't touch.
He
Yeah.
loves it. She loves his Spanish. My
Charles.
mom speaks fluent. It was her first language, so if he speaks Spanish, she's gone.
She's gone.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my dad does not speak Spanish at all.
Charles, my tortured boy.
No, he's so sad.
Oh, sad boy.
He's going through it. What with that trophy?
Yeah, what's a sad boy trope?
It's not even grumpy sunshine. It's
No.
like going through
He's
it.
simply
sunshine.
sad boy.
Is there a trope for that?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a new trope.
God,
We've just-
we're romance writers who cannot think of tropes, but it's just like, yeah, we could create one. Sad boy ex, who would he, I don't think a sunshine would work for him. I don't think the sunshine would part those clouds at all.
Friend he seems very good with, and she seems very like shines, and he needs somebody soft.
Yeah, I think, you
To
know,
comfort him in his teenage life.
this is terrible. God, Ferrari is my red flag, yeah. You know, it's just like, torture that boy. I'm worried about Lewis going there next year. I'm gonna be so
I
honest.
cannot wait personally for the Lewis Hamilton radios next year.
Oh.
Those are gonna serve.
Bottom, my tires are gone. This is not Bono. This is somebody who's not gonna help you with strategy. You're gonna have to figure it out yourself, my
It's gonna
guy.
be a disaster.
It's
gonna be so
It's
fun.
gonna be wonderful to watch.
Start watching F1 now.
Yeah, now is the time. Should we do one more driver?
One more. Do you have a driver request?
Danny, well, I mean, he's like sunshine, sunshine. Yeah. I think, you know, he honestly, brother's best friend for him.
Yeah.
Like, you know, or like childhood friends to lovers, like you grew up next door to each other. I'm not describing across the line.
Not across the line.
Yeah.
I tried so hard here that you could not write fan fiction. I stand by that, but there's like a little bit like,
There's a few moments where you're just like,
that's a little bit.
that's a little, you got away with that, yeah. No, but I think those are our good choices. Thank you for that question. Anybody else? Or are we like, wrapping it up now? But thank you, everyone, for.
Thank you so much.
It's one of my favorite books.
Thank you all so much for being here. We are going to set up a signing line outside by our table. If you've not purchased a copy of the book, you can do so now. If you've not picked up your copy of your book, we do have like all copies of the book here now. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much to the Hill Center, and yay, everyone.